Hello once again, everybody. My name's Mitch. Welcome back to this series, I'm Turning 30, where for a whole year I'm going to post every single week a new video about stuff that I like, things that make me me, things that might happen in my future, or things that have happened in my past. And today, as you can see, we're going to talk about anime. Now, wait. Before you click away on the video or start to fast forward to see what I'm talking about, this isn't going to be the exact video that I think you might think it will be. While I am going to give some of my recommendations of things that I like to watch, I am going to explain when I got into anime, why I've continued to watch it, and kind of how it's affected my life. And I am going to try to include in the recommendations section stuff for everybody. People that watch anime really casually, people that have never watched it, people that are kind of hardcore into it like I am, or just anything in between. Now, growing up, I didn't really know what anime was. I didn't know that there was like a certain style that fit into the anime genre. I watched a lot of cartoons when I was younger, but I didn't really watch any anime per se. The only anime that I watched were Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And while those were designed in the anime medium, I didn't even really see them as anime. It was just another way to draw cartoons. I didn't consider it anime at the time. But those were really the only two that I watched at all. Now, when I got older, middle school, high school, I, of course, saw like the shows like Naruto, Bleach, One Piece on, I believe it was either Cartoon Network or Boomerang or something like that when I would get home from school. But I just never got into them, and a part of the problem was the people that I associated with those types of shows when I was in middle school and high school. Yes, like many people my age or around my age, there were people that were super cringe about it. And by no means did I hate the people or not get along with the people that watched anime. It was just like they were a certain type of way, and I felt like I just didn't relate to them or get what they were interested in, so we just really didn't engage with one another. All this to say, I was interested in like Asian culture and like how they did things, and I always wanted to go to Japan. It was my dream destination and kind of visit and see things over there, but I just didn't really understand how big anime was a part of the culture over here, and has only gotten bigger throughout the years. Now, it's not just Japan that's doing anime. There's a lot of South Korean manhwa being adapted into shows. I've seen some Chinese anime. There's different types of anime being made by Asian countries, and you can even see that in some of the stuff that Disney's making right now with their Star Wars series that they've come out with recently. Star Wars Visions is one of the things that I would recommend people watch looking to kind of see what anime is about. There was the first season that was just all different Japanese studios. It's a one episode thing. You don't need to know anything going in. And if you know anything about Star Wars, you have a decent background enough already. It's just Japanese studios' takes on what the Star Wars universe could be, maybe in another timeline, essentially. So that would be a recommendation. There's also the season 2 that just came out, I believe, 2 months ago. And instead of just Japanese studios, they did worldwide studios. So there's a bunch of studios from Europe. I believe there's a studio from Africa, or maybe 2. I think some South American studios. So there are a couple of different studios from different countries that normally don't do like these type of big animated shows that at least a lot of people see, that got permission to work on Star Wars and tell a story through the animated medium. But before I go farther into my recommendations, I'll talk about kind of when I started to watch anime. Now, right before I had left on my mission, I had a friend of mine named Jimmy who showed me a show called Claymore. Now, Claymore was the first like true anime that I watched that was like in Japanese, where I read the subtitles. Like, I mean, if you count Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, I guess fine, but like Claymore was the first like show that I feel like I really like watched that was considered an anime, or at least I considered an anime. And I thought it was super intriguing. It was like this gritty, dark, like really story-driven show, and I was just so impressed by what I saw on screen and kind of the emotions that I felt at 18 years old watching this show. But I went on my mission and kind of didn't really think about anime for the 2 years that I lived in Mexico for. When I returned from Mexico, I was still fairly interested and thinking about Claymore because I was still friends with that same person, Jimmy. And we ended up figuring out that there was a show that had recently aired called Sword Art Online. Now, if you don't know anything about Sword Art Online, I don't recommend looking on the internet if you're looking to get into anime about Sword Art Online. Because I can tell you right now, if there's anybody that's watched anime at all and has looked at opinions on Sword Art online, there are people coming with pitchforks essentially to this video to either dislike it or tell me I'm wrong down in the comments down below. But Sword Art Online introduced me to anime, and because of that, I think it's one of the greatest animes of all time. I'll link down to it down below once again. I believe I put it in one of my other videos a few videos back. But you can see that I have rated most of Sword Art Online either a 10 out of 10 or a 9 or an 8. I think there might be a 7 in there, either a special episode or something like that. But I've rated them all fairly highly because of the special place that Sword Art Online kind of holds in my heart into introducing me to this medium. I think if I was to go back and watch Sword Art Online now after watching all the shows that I've seen and hearing all the stories I've heard and understanding what certain tropes are in anime, I wouldn't be as heavily intrigued by the idea of Sword Art Online. For anybody that's watched Sword Art Online, I don't even think the back half of season 1 is that bad. I really didn't mind the whole fairy arc with his sister. Really didn't bother me that much. But again, this is in the lens of somebody that's really never watched any anime besides Claymore. This was the first like isekai, going to another world, video game like show that I had ever seen. And the reason that I think it's one of the greatest anime ever made is because it is such a good way to get people introduced to anime. Now that I've watched a decent amount of anime and I've always been into video games, it is easy to see that they are relatively close to the same sphere. I would say that there's a lot of overlap, as you can see, especially now with a lot of the different anime type games that are coming out. I mean, we're talking about even a long time ago, Final Fantasy was coming out, and all these Japanese studios are really hitting it off, and we're seeing more anime-esque art in different games as well. So they've always had this like close sphere to one another. And I feel like the release of Sword Art Online, it came out at the exact right time it needed to be successful. Gaming was kind of on the rise, and anime, I would say, was also starting to be on the rise, maybe not quite as much, but it caused this shift where people kind of saw Sword Art Online, because I believe it was a lot of people's first anime, because it was so easy to kind of mesh the two worlds and watch this show and kind of understand what was going on. And that's why I think it's one of the greatest anime of all time. It introduced a whole new group of people that may not have given anime a chance, even though it's so close to their other hobby. It has to be considered one of the greats just because so many people watch anime regardless of what they think about it now because of that show. So I watched the first season of that show with a couple of friends, and I started figuring out I really like this anime thing. I really liked Claymore. Now I like this show. We watched a couple of other shows together, one called Erased and another one called Log Horizon. And if you know anything about those shows, it's kind of similar base concept where you go to another body or it has some type of other world or timeline that you go to, which is something that I think is very interesting to explore. And then figuring out that there were just a bunch of shows like this, I was kind of hooked. I started going down the rabbit hole and finding these different shows that kind of fit this similar theme and just watched a whole bunch of them. That's around my 22, 23, I was watching anime every day. You can even say they're trash shows, just these goofy fun shows where they get powers, go to another world, some type of thing. And it was really fun to watch. I really enjoyed my time because I didn't know anything about the medium. I didn't know what tropes were. I didn't know like why certain shows might be considered bad, and I hadn't seen like these really epic good storytelling shows in the anime medium, so I was just enjoying everything that it had to offer. That I think a lot of people do when you first dive into a hobby. You just kind of enjoy everything about it a lot of the time because you're invested, and because you're new, everything just seems so interesting. And the note that I want to end on before I go on to the recommendation side of the video is this. There is likely an anime, regardless of who you are, that will appeal to your interests, to your hobbies, something that is adjacent. There is likely an anime for it or something close to it that you will find amazing, which is why I'm going to do this recommendation part next. Even if you don't get into it as heavily as I do, like buying the posters, watching different shows every single day, buying these little anime figurines, like there is a show or a concept in anime that will interest you. Again, you don't need to dive into it as heavily as I have, but there is something, I promise you, that will interest you and make you feel emotions. So without further ado, let's jump into the recommendation section of the video. Now, I'm going to try to put this into kind of sections or genres so that you can kind of find out a show that you will be wanting to watch specifically, as well as just top shows that maybe don't fit into a genre or that I just hold in high esteem just in general. I'll try to give you a brief overview of the show, what it's about, and hopefully it'll hook you. So we'll start off with the anime that I mentioned earlier. I kind of went over what it is briefly, but I wanted to kind of just re-talk about Sword Art Online. Now, Kirito is a gamer. And when I say gamer, he is a gamer. He gets a game that is the first ever virtual reality MMORPG, where you can go into the game and be there with everybody else with their virtual avatars. You can experience this MMO style while being like actually in the game via these little helmets that they wear. Now, this isn't really spoilers necessarily because this happens in the first episode, but at the end of the first episode, you figure out that all these people that essentially logged in at a midnight release time for this VR MMORPG are now trapped in the game forever. There is no logout button for them to get out of this game. And because there's no logout button, there's no way for them to essentially leave this avatar body that they are inhabiting. And the game master, the person who created this game, essentially makes everybody look how they look in real life, so the avatars disappear, and you have to figure out how to finish the game in order to log out of the game. The catch is that if you die in the game to any monsters, events, other players, you will die in real life. So the story follows Kirito trying to log out of this game. He meets other people, friends, and they try to kind of conquer this thing together. And that's just the first half of the first season. And then the second half goes into a totally separate, kind of similar situation. I don't know how well I did at selling that, but that concept got me interested in kind of watching that entire show and keeping up with it up until now. I think it's in its 5th or 6th season now. There's a couple of movies, a spin-off series. There's a whole lot to do with it. So if you start watching it, you got a decent amount of things to watch. The next show that I want to mention is a show that I wish I could watch again for the very first time. For this show, I'm not sure if it's necessarily the best for someone that's never seen anime or kind of knows what the anime sphere is about at all. But if you have seen any at all, I definitely recommend trying out Madoka Magica. Madoka Magica is just a game-changing anime. Like, it really flips how you think about certain aspects of magical girls and what can happen to them and why they exist. If you know anything about magical girls in the anime sphere but you haven't seen Madoka Magica, or even if you've just heard the concept of magical girls and you have an idea of what a magical girl would be, please watch Madoka Magica. There is so much that you can learn and like think about by watching the series, and I really wish I could experience it for the first time again. Also, I'll toss this in right after that recommendation. I'm going to try to be semi-brief here because I feel like I could talk about certain shows for a very long time, and this video would be really, really long. So if you want me to do a separate video kind of going into more depth of different animes that I really love and the recommendations and what they're about, please let me know down below and I'll make it just a part 2, more focused on just recommending shows in a certain genre, or maybe you want to hear about shows that I think are terrible. Please just let me know down in the comments down below. But yeah, I'm going to try to be succinct with it, so if some of them feel like they don't have like great descriptions, don't fault the anime for that. I'm trying to just make it digestible into a small video that people will watch. This next show that I'm going to recommend is actually a movie. It's only about an hour and a half long. You don't need to know anything about a series beforehand because it's its own standalone thing, and that show is Your Name. Your Name is a crazy, wonderful film. It's something that I would recommend anybody watch, regardless of how much anime you've seen or what you know about it. It can stand alone on its own 2 feet and just be this amazing thing for you to watch. I don't really want to spoil it too much since it's a movie, but essentially it's a romance between 2 high schoolers that live in different parts of Japan. They, for some reason, swap bodies. They have to navigate the situation and other situations around them, and it's just this wonderful, beautiful movie to watch. I also wish I could watch it again for the first time, similar to Madoka Magica, but even rewatching Your Name, I still cry at the end almost every time. Also, anything that the director makes in general is just a really good movie. He has a couple of other movies that have come out, Weathering with You and Osusume, I believe is the name of the other one. But just wonderful films. He's a wonderful director and just really understands how to tell this story. They're beautiful films, and I recommend watching any of his works if you have the time to do so. Another show that I would recommend people to watch that want to get into watching anime and kind of understand what anime is about and kind of the tropes in anime, I would recommend a comedy anime named Konosuba. Now, I want you to understand, if you go in and you watch Konosuba, it's one of my favorite comedy animes of all time. But it does have anime tropes in it, but I feel like it explains them, or you kind of get the context of why it exists. It definitely has some like weird aspects to it, weird zany anime antics and all that. But if you're getting into anime, or maybe you are trying to understand someone that's kind of into anime, watch Konosuba. It does, I feel like, a good job of showing and either explaining or helping you understand what people think is funny or things that happen in anime just across the board. Next recommendation, I'm going to throw in a quick crazy action one that just came out just recently, where the story's a banger, the action's a banger, just the entire thing is just so interesting to watch, is Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Again, because of the studio that made Cyberpunk Edgerunners, it does have certain anime-esque things that maybe won't make sense to certain people when they watch it, but overall across the board, I think it's a show, if you're looking for something in that action, really story-driven type of show, it will be very interesting for you to watch Cyberpunk Edgerunners. And again, I don't want to try to spoil anything with it, but it is a wonderful show that just came out and really can get people invested in the medium of anime. Hey, did you want an anime that's more historic and has action? Then look no further than Vinland Saga. Vinland Saga is an anime to do with Vikings. And not just Vikings, the people that are affected by the Vikings' actions. That includes kingdoms, different small villages in the area where Vikings existed, as well as people in the general area or people in groups that might be related to them at all. Now, the story is, again, just wonderful. It's still ongoing and it's in season 2 right now, but it really has to do with a lot of different parental type of relationships and how you feel towards different people, maybe more in a mentor role, or how you see people as different mother figures, father figures, just authority figures in general in your life, kind of how you see them, how that can change. And it's just a, again, wonderful story. And if that's what you're looking for, action with a little bit more of a this really happened type of thing, no fantasy, nothing like that, I recommend watching Vinland Saga. Hey, you looking for something a little bit more spicy? Sorry for the jump scare, but fair warning, this next section is going to be the spicy section, so if you don't want to hear about any spicy type of anime, or really the spicy type of things that you might have seen in different anime gifs or kind of associate with anime culture, skip this section. Alright, now that those people have skipped, or if you haven't skipped, sorry, I'm going to tell you about these spicy anime. So again, last chance. There is a plethora of spicy anime for you to watch that is actually interesting, not just in the spiciness that it has, but the other elements that surround it. Now, if you're looking for pure, silly, goofy, wild, harem, spicy fun, I can't recommend anything other than Monster Musume. All of my friends know about Monster Musume because it's one of the anime that I will always show them to... What's the word I'm looking for here? Show them, essentially, what almost the very edge of ecchi harem anime can be, and be shown on a streaming service. Now, the premise of the show starts off with this. There are monster people that essentially that have lived on the earth about the same as we have, but essentially they've kept hidden or figured out a way to transform themselves, or just been hidden by the government. Something has happened to hide them, but there is now this worldwide treaty that essentially treats them like protected people. Now, these protected people have to find places to live, and what better way to kind of introduce these monsters' culture than having them live with current humans? After going through this premise in the first few minutes of the first episode, we jump to a adult man who ends up taking on 5 different types of monster girls. Now, we are in the spicy section here, so obviously one dude lives with 5 girls, you put the math together. It's not, I can't say this enough, it's not hentai, because they don't have sex, but, things adjacent to that nature. And yeah, it's just a really good time. Honestly, it's just a real fun watch. It's so goofy and so odd and weird. It's just fun to watch, and the designs of the girls are good too. What can I say? Now, we're still in the spicy section here, but instead of going to like the ecchi harem side, I'm going to switch gears to a more adult-oriented comedy show. There is a show called Grand Blue that I absolutely love. It's a diving anime, but the diving, I would say, isn't necessarily the main focus. I would say that's like the long storyline plot point that like you can kind of stitch all the episodes together with, but it focuses on a group with the main character moving to this new city, coming to this new college, and figuring out how to navigate college life. And how that goes, I wouldn't say it's spicy in the normal anime sense, but it's definitely a lot more adult than a lot of other shows, because a lot of other shows, it's high schoolers or middle schoolers and doesn't necessarily look at the college scene. And this one does, and it's very fun, as well as beautiful when they do the diving scenes. It's very interesting to watch, and I highly recommend it. And now I'm going to do some rapid fire suggestions, and I'll put all of the shows that I mentioned up here on screen, or they will be in the list down links below. And with the rapid fire, I'm going to just list the name of the show, maybe a brief synopsis, and the genre. First one of this section, Tsugumomo. Tsugumomo is a show where a boy finds an object left to him by his mother that can come to life and is used to fight off demons. Very interesting. Second season, 10 out of 10. Second show, Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. Kobayashi's Dragon Maid is a slice of life show. Now, slice of life is a contentious, I think, genre in the anime community. You either love it or you hate it. I really like it, but the best part about this is it's slice of life for, I would say, maybe 80% of it, and then the other 20% are these crazy weird battles and things that makes it just this not fluff slice of life show. It's very interesting, but for the most part, it's just like a nice feel-good show and kind of learn more about yourself and relationships around you. Third recommendation, Mob Psycho 100. Mob Psycho 100, a boy has telekinetic powers. He has to figure out how to try to be normal, or he wants to be normal. He doesn't necessarily want to use his powers to get ahead in life, so he tries to figure out how to be ahead in life without using these telekinetic powers. Very interesting premise. I would say it's more of like an action-ish type show, but just like a nice, I think well-balanced show in general. I don't know if it fits into just one particular genre. Next show, Violet Evergarden. Violet Evergarden is a show where a teenage girl who was made into a tool for war, is now tasked with writing letters for people and hearing their stories and trying to figure out her own emotions after essentially only knowing how to be a tool for war her entire life. The genre would be drama. Looking for a show that's not spicy but still a harem, I recommend Quintessential Quintuplets. It has an ending. The journey throughout is wonderful. You know that there's an ending from the very first episode, and it's just a fun journey to watch. Basic premise is Guy meets quintuplets. He knew one of the quintuplets when he was a kid, kind of fell in love with that quintuplet when he was a kid, and he's trying to figure out which one of them it was, and he just kind of gets to know them. Genre for Quintessential Quintuplets could be considered a harem, rom-com type area. Are you looking for something old school, something that is not necessarily in this kind of new anime style and has all these weird tropes and is just kind of more like a Western cartoon? Look no further than Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop is a sci-fi old space Western, essentially. It is a wonderful show. It's not necessarily I would say the storyline is not like perfectly linear, but there is a good storyline behind it. overall, Cowboy Bebop is a wonderful show that I think people that are just kind of looking for a old style Western space show with bounty hunters and that type of thing, that Cowboy Bebop is the show for you to watch. I'm going to mention 2 more shows here. First show that I'm going to mention is just a pure slice of life show. It is called New Game. New Game is about a girl who just graduated from college and got hired at her first ever adult job at a game company. It follows her being at the company, figuring out how an adult job works, meeting your heroes, and just general slice of life goodness that is kind of just, you get to learn more about what goes on behind the scenes at a gaming company. Last show I'll recommend is actually one of the posters behind me. It's called Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. I'll put it up here on the screen for you so you don't have to remember that title. But in essence, this show is this deep psychological look into how people perceive themselves and how other people perceive them. It's highly interesting. It's got mystery. It's just overall very interesting premise and has a lot in the show that makes you think about what's happening. But yeah, that's all the recommendations that I'm going to go over, because again, I have so many shows that I feel like I could recommend for different things. If you want a specific show and you're looking for a specific show that fits under a specific tag, genre, thing you're interested in, let me know and I will let you know of a show that could fit that interest for you, because I've watched a decent amount. But yeah, thanks for indulging me today, guys. I really like talking about anime. Hopefully this video wasn't too long for you. I really enjoyed, again, making it for you, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. My name is Mitch. I'm turning 30, and I'll see you guys again real soon. Later.